The fluorescent lights in the Pentagon's briefing room cast harsh shadows across the worn faces of senior military officials as they filed out in uncomfortable silence. It was March 15th, 1985, and what should have been a routine intelligence meeting had just taken a disturbing turn. General Thomas Hartwell remained seated at the polished mahogany table, his weathered hands folded tightly, his steel-gray eyes fixed on a classified folder marked with symbols that none of his colleagues recognized. The room still echoed with his words, words that would haunt those present for decades to come. He had spoken of ships in the sky, of intercepted transmissions in languages that defied human comprehension, and of a war that was coming whether humanity was ready or not. Colonel Margaret Stevens, Hartwell's longtime aide, hesitated at the doorway, watching her superior with growing concern. She had served under the general for 8 years, had seen him navigate the complexities of Cold War politics with unwavering composure. But this was different. His voice had carried a tremor she had never heard before, a desperation that seemed to emanate from somewhere deep within his soul. The other officials had exchanged glances of disbelief and whispered concerns about post-traumatic stress, but Stevens knew better. General Hartwell was many things, but delusional was not one of them. The March air outside the Pentagon carried an unusual chill as Hartwell finally emerged from the building, his military posture intact despite the weight of the burden he carried. He had dedicated 32 years of his life to serving his country, rising through the ranks from a young lieutenant in Vietnam to one of the most respected strategic minds in the military. His record was impeccable, his loyalty unquestioned, his judgment sound. Yet today he had seen the doubt in their eyes, heard the subtle shift in their voices when they addressed him. They thought he was losing his mind, that the pressures of his position and the memories of war had finally broken something inside him. If only they knew the truth. If only they could see what he had seen in those classified files, what he had witnessed during those late-night briefings in rooms that officially didn't exist. The weight of knowledge was a crushing burden, especially when that knowledge concerned the very survival of the human race. As he walked to his car, Hartwell couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that eyes unseen were tracking his every movement. The paranoia wasn't unfounded. For the past 3 months, ever since he had been granted access to Project Guardian, his life had become a carefully orchestrated dance of surveillance and secrecy. The drive to his suburban Virginia home took him through neighborhoods where families were settling in for quiet Friday evenings, children playing in yards while parents prepared dinner, all of them blissfully unaware of the cosmic drama unfolding above their heads. Hartwell envied their ignorance, longed for the days when his greatest concern was tactical deployment in earthly conflicts. His wife, Eleanor, would be waiting for him with her usual mixture of patience and worry. She had noticed the changes in him, the way he would stare at the night sky for hours, the cryptic phone calls at odd hours, the documents he would study with an intensity that bordered on obsession. He had tried to shield her from the truth, but Eleanor Hartwell had been a military wife for too long not to recognize the signs of a man carrying secrets that were eating him alive. Their marriage had survived deployments, near-death experiences, and the constant stress of military life, but this felt different, more dangerous than any enemy they had faced before. The house stood exactly as he had left it that morning. White colonial with blue shutters, the American flag hanging motionless in the still air. Yet everything felt different now. Inside, Eleanor was setting the table for 2, her movements automatic after decades of military routine, but her eyes held questions she was afraid to ask. The general kissed his wife's cheek, inhaling the familiar scent of her perfume, wondering if this might be one of their last quiet moments together. The classified folder remained tucked under his arm, its contents burning like a brand against his ribs. Tonight, he would make a decision that would either save humanity or destroy everything he held dear. The phone rang 3 times during dinner, each call met with the same response from Hartwell: "I'm not available." Eleanor watched her husband push food around his plate, his appetite seemingly lost to whatever demons were haunting him. She had been married to the military long enough to recognize when her husband was preparing for battle, but this time she couldn't identify the enemy. Later that evening, as Eleanor settled into bed with a book she wouldn't actually read, Hartwell retreated to his study, a room lined with military histories, strategic analyses, and commendations that told the story of a distinguished career. But tonight, none of those achievements mattered. He opened the classified folder and spread its contents across his desk, photographs that shouldn't exist, transcripts of communications that defied explanation, and reports that painted a picture so extraordinary and terrifying that his hands shook as he reviewed them once again. The images showed craft of impossible design hovering over military installations, beings that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and most disturbing of all, evidence that this contact had been ongoing for decades. The folder contained testimonies from pilots, radar operators, and intelligence officers, all sworn to secrecy, all reporting encounters that challenged everything humanity thought it knew about its place in the universe. Project Guardian wasn't just monitoring alien activity, it was documenting humanity's first contact with an intelligence so advanced that the very concept of war, as humans understood it, was laughably primitive. The weight of this knowledge pressed down on Hartwell's shoulders as he began to write, his pen moving across paper with the urgency of a man running out of time. "If you're reading this," he began, "then something has happened to me, and the truth I've tried to protect may be the only thing that can save us all." His words flowed with the precision of a military report and the passion of a father's love letter to his children. He wrote about Project Guardian, about the beings that had been watching humanity for generations, about the terrible realization that the coming conflict wasn't an invasion in any conventional sense. The entities weren't coming to conquer Earth, they were coming to reclaim it. Humanity, according to the intercepted communications he had studied, was the alien presence on this planet, a species that had been seeded here millennia ago as part of an experiment that was now reaching its conclusion. The war General Thomas Hartwell had tried to warn his colleagues about wasn't a battle for Earth's future. It was a reckoning for humanity's past, and time was running out for everyone he loved. The morning of March 18th, 1985, dawned gray and cold over Fort Myers, the military installation where General Hartwell had maintained his office for the past 4 years. Colonel Stevens arrived early, as was her custom, expecting to find her superior already reviewing intelligence reports and preparing for the day's briefings. Instead, she found his office exactly as he had left it 3 days earlier, with one notable exception. The classified Project Guardian files were gone, and in their place lay a single sheet of paper with Hartwell's familiar handwriting. The message was brief but chilling. "They know that I know, and they're coming for me tonight. If I disappear, look for the truth in the place where we first learned to fly. Tell Eleanor that I love her, and that everything I did was to protect the future of our species." The note was signed with Hartwell's full name and military identification number, a formality that seemed oddly appropriate for a man who had lived his entire adult life in service to protocol and duty. The disappearance of General Thomas Hartwell sent shockwaves through the upper echelons of the military establishment, not because of what he had said about alien contact, which many still dismissed as the ravings of a stressed mind, but because of how completely and mysteriously he had vanished. There were no signs of struggle in his home, no indication of flight or preparation for departure. His car remained in the driveway, his personal effects untouched, his bank accounts unaccessed. It was as if he had simply stepped out of existence, leaving behind only questions and the growing certainty among those who knew him that General Thomas Hartwell would never have abandoned his post or his family without extraordinary cause. Eleanor Hartwell provided investigators with the letter her husband had left for her, a document that spoke of love, duty, and sacrifice, but offered no concrete clues about his whereabouts or the mysterious references to beings from beyond Earth. The official investigation concluded that General Hartwell had suffered a psychological breakdown and had either fled the country or taken his own life in some remote location where his body would never be recovered. His military records were sealed, his security clearances revoked posthumously, and his name gradually faded from official memory. But among a small group of military insiders, questions lingered. Why had Project Guardian been disbanded immediately after Hartwell's disappearance? Why were all personnel associated with the project reassigned to different commands, often in different countries? Why did the very mention of the general's name in certain circles result in immediate transfers or early retirements? Colonel Stevens, now promoted and stationed in Germany, continued to search for answers, driven by loyalty to her former commander and by the nagging certainty that his warnings about alien contact contained more truth than fiction. For 38 years, the mystery of General Thomas Hartwell's disappearance remained unsolved, a footnote in military history that occasionally surfaced in conspiracy theories and unsolved mystery documentaries. Eleanor Hartwell never remarried, maintaining her husband's study exactly as he had left it, convinced that someday he would return with explanations that would make everything clear. She passed away in 2019, taking her secrets and her unwavering faith in her husband's integrity to the grave. It seemed that the truth about Project Guardian and the General's final days would remain buried forever, lost to the classified archives and fading memories of those who had served alongside him. But truth, especially truth as explosive and world-changing as what Thomas Hartwell had discovered, has a way of refusing to stay buried. The leaked document surfaced on a secure server used by investigative journalists in December 2023, uploaded by an anonymous source using encrypted protocols that suggested military-level security expertise. The file was labeled Guardian Final Report, T. Hartwell, classification level beyond top secret, and contained nearly 200 pages of material that read like science fiction, but carried the authentication codes and formatting of genuine military intelligence. The document detailed encounters between military personnel and extraterrestrial entities dating back to 1947, described technology that defied known physics, and most remarkably, included personal logs written by General Hartwell during his final weeks of service. These logs revealed a man grappling with information so staggering that it challenged every assumption about humanity's place in the cosmos. According to the leaked files, Project Guardian had been established to monitor what the military termed non-terrestrial intelligence operating within Earth's atmosphere and beyond. The project's scope expanded dramatically in the 1980s, when new detection technologies began picking up what appeared to be coordinated surveillance of human military installations, nuclear facilities, and space exploration programs. General Hartwell had been brought into the project because of his expertise in strategic planning and his psychological profile, which indicated an unusual capacity for processing paradigm-shifting information without suffering cognitive breakdown. What the military psychologists hadn't anticipated was how the truth about humanity's origins and future would affect a man whose entire worldview was built on protecting his species and his country. The most disturbing revelations in the Guardian files concerned the nature of the extraterrestrial contact itself. The beings that military personnel had been encountering were not invaders in any conventional sense, but rather representatives of what they termed the collective, a group of species that had been involved in seeding and monitoring intelligent life throughout the galaxy for millions of years. According to intercepted communications that Project Guardian had been analyzing, Earth was one of thousands of worlds where biological experiments were being conducted, with different species serving as subjects for studies in consciousness, evolution, and social development. Humanity, the files suggested, was not a naturally evolved species, but rather a hybrid creation, designed to exhibit specific traits that would make them suitable for roles within the collective's vast interstellar civilization. General Hartwell's personal logs revealed his growing horror as he came to understand the implications of this information. In entries dated just days before his disappearance, he wrote about sleepless nights spent contemplating the ethical dimensions of humanity's situation. Were humans truly free beings with the right to determine their own destiny? Or were they sophisticated laboratory subjects whose entire history had been carefully orchestrated by forces beyond their comprehension? The general struggled with questions that had no easy answers, torn between his duty to protect humanity and his growing realization that the very concept of protection might be meaningless when faced with beings capable of manipulating reality at a quantum level. The final entries in Hartwell's log painted a picture of a man on the edge of a breakthrough that would either save humanity or damn it forever. He had apparently made contact with a faction within the collective, beings who opposed the planned graduation of humanity from their experimental status to full integration into the galactic community. This faction believed that humans had developed beyond the parameters of the original experiment and deserved the right to choose their own path, even if that path led to isolation from the broader cosmic civilization. Hartwell's last log entry, dated March 17, 1985, described a planned meeting with representatives of this faction, beings he referred to as the Liberators, who had promised to provide him with technology and information that could help humanity defend itself against forced integration. The leaked Guardian files included technical specifications for devices that seemed to exist at the intersection of science and impossibility, machines capable of disrupting the quantum fields that the collective used for transportation and communication, weapons that could target consciousness itself rather than physical matter, and most intriguingly, a process described as dimensional shielding, NUNG, that could theoretically hide entire planets from detection by advanced civilizations. General Hartwell had apparently been working with a team of military scientists to prototype these devices using materials and principles provided by his alien contacts. The implications were staggering. If the technology worked, humanity might be able to achieve true independence from their cosmic overseers, but the risks were equally enormous. What happened to General Thomas Hartwell on the night of March 17, 1985, remains a mystery that the leaked Guardian files can only partially illuminate. According to the documents, the planned meeting with the Liberators was to take place at a location described only as the place where we first learned to fly, a reference that investigators have interpreted as either Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where the Wright brothers conducted their historic flights, or possibly Edwards Air Force Base, where much of America's early jet and rocket testing occurred. Satellite imagery from that period shows unusual electromagnetic anomalies over both locations during the nights of March 17th and 18th. Anomalies that were officially classified as equipment malfunctions, but which the Guardian files suggest may have been evidence of the interdimensional technology described in the project reports. The most chilling aspect of the leaked documents is their suggestion that General Hartwell's disappearance may not have been the end of his story, but rather the beginning of a new chapter in humanity's relationship with the cosmos. Several entries in the files, written in a style consistent with Hartwell's earlier logs, but dated years after his official disappearance, describe ongoing efforts to prepare humanity for what is termed the final choice. These later entries suggest that the general may have succeeded in making contact with the Liberators and may have been working with them in some capacity to develop Earth's defensive capabilities against forced integration into the collective. If the leaked Guardian files are authentic, and multiple independent analyses suggest they may be, then General Thomas Hartwell's warnings about an alien war were both prescient and tragically misunderstood. The conflict he foresaw was not a conventional war between species, but rather a struggle for the very soul of humanity. A battle between those who would see our species continue as willing participants in a cosmic experiment and those who believe we have earned the right to determine our own destiny among the stars. The general's disappearance, rather than being the end of his service to humanity, may have been the beginning of his most important mission, one that continues to unfold in ways that challenge our understanding of reality itself. Today, as governments around the world begin to acknowledge the reality of unexplained aerial phenomena and the possibility of non-human intelligence, the story of General Thomas Hartwell takes on new significance. His warnings, once dismissed as the ravings of a man under stress, now seem remarkably prophetic in light of recent revelations about military encounters with craft displaying impossible flight characteristics and the growing scientific consensus that we may not be alone in the universe. Whether the general is still alive, still fighting his secret war on behalf of humanity, or whether he paid the ultimate price for his courage in confronting forces beyond human comprehension, his legacy continues to inspire those who believe that the truth, no matter how strange or terrifying, deserves to be told. The leaked Guardian files may be just the beginning of revelations that will forever change how humanity sees itself and its place in the vast, mysterious cosmos we call home.